Today's episode is a conversation many private practice owners are either having or avoiding. Should I sell to private equity? If you're a physician owner, chances are you've had at least one conversation with a firm interested in buying your practice. Maybe they promised a lucrative buyout, better back office support, or rapid expansion. Maybe they positioned themselves as the answer to your administrative headaches. It all sounds appealing, especially in a challenging reimbursement environment. But here's the truth. Private equity deals are more complicated than they look on paper. There's what's pitched, and then there's what's really happening inside of practices post-sale. Welcome to Medical Money Matters, the podcast where you can find experts, answers, and resources so that you can achieve mastery over the financial and business aspects of your practice. Hello, everyone. I'm your host, Jill Arena. I began my career in accounting and finance, and I have more than 30 years of experience running medical groups. I own and operate a national healthcare consulting and revenue cycle company, and I am the author of Physician Heal Thy Financial Self. In 2020, I co-founded the Physician Leadership Project, and my passion is to increase financial and business literacy for physicians. Episode 138, What Private Equity Won't Tell You, a Physician's Guide to Due Diligence. Welcome to Medical Money Matters, the podcast where we help physicians and healthcare leaders navigate the complex business of medicine with clarity, confidence, and a bit of candor. Today's episode is a conversation many private practice owners are either having or avoiding. Should I sell to private equity? If you're a physician owner, chances are you've had at least one conversation with a firm interested in buying your practice. Maybe they promised a lucrative buyout, better back office support, or rapid expansion. Maybe they positioned themselves as the answer to your administrative headaches. It all sounds appealing, especially in a challenging reimbursement environment. But here's the truth. Private equity deals are more complicated than they look on paper. There's what's pitched, and then there's what's really happening inside of practices post-sale. So today, we're getting honest. This episode is for anyone considering a deal or just trying to understand what PE involvement could mean for their future. If you're going through any transition with your practice, our goal is for you to be fully informed upfront and make the best possible decision, so it's one you're happy with several years down the road. In considering a deal with PE, there are a lot of moving parts and pieces. We'll unpack the promises, the pitfalls, and the must-ask questions before signing on the dotted line. Let's start with the pitch. Private equity groups know how to market. Their pitch to physicians is often polished, enticing, and built around three core ideas: financial gain, operational relief, and growth opportunity. The first and most powerful is the financial upside. A private equity deal usually includes a cash payout for a portion of the practice, with the promise of a future windfall after a second recapitalization. You're told this is your chance to unlock equity you've built for years. It's positioned as a wealth-building move, not just a sale. Then comes operational support. PE-backed management companies promise to take over burdensome administrative tasks, HR, billing, compliance, so you can, quote, get back to practicing medicine, end quote. They bring in infrastructure, tech platforms, and process experts who claim to boost efficiency and revenue. Third is the idea of scalability. You're shown a vision of regional dominance. Quote, we're rolling up the best practices in the region. You'll be part of something bigger without losing your identity, end quote. And of course, they emphasize that you'll retain clinical autonomy. You'll still make the medical decisions. Your day-to-day won't change. We just handle the business side is a common refrain. So the pitch sounds like a win-win: liquidity, less admin stress, and the chance to grow. But here's the catch. What's not being said often matters just as much. Let's dig into what you might be missing. First, clinical autonomy isn't always guaranteed. While PE firms may not directly dictate your clinical decisions, they do shape the environment in which you make them. That includes scheduling, staffing levels, referral patterns, and even the emphasis on certain procedures. Subtle pressure to prioritize high-margin services or increase patient volume can creep in even without formal mandates. Second, your compensation model will likely change. Pre-acquisition, you're an owner. Post-acquisition, you're an employee or maybe a minority shareholder in a larger entity. That comes with productivity targets, altered incentive plans, and limited say in how compensation evolves. We've seen deals where physicians were thrilled with their buyout until they realized their post-close earnings were significantly lower than expected due to new RVU targets or capped bonuses. Third, there's often a culture clash. PE firms are driven by return on investment and exit timelines. That mindset can create tension in practices where the physician culture values long-term patient relationships and clinical excellence over short-term financial performance. Physician turnover tends to spike in the years following acquisition, often due to friction with non-clinical leadership or shifting expectations. Fourth, the patient experience can suffer. With increased scheduling demands, reduced flexibility, or cost-driven changes in support staff, patients may start to feel like numbers rather than individuals. And when practices lose their local identity, say by being rebranded under a national platform, long-standing relationships can weaken. These aren't meant to be scare tactics, they're patterns we've seen across dozens of deals. And while not every private equity group operates the same way, the risk of unintended consequences is real. So how do you go into this with eyes wide open? You start with due diligence, not just on their end, but on yours too. This is a two-way street. Here are some questions every physician owner should be asking before signing a deal. You're listening to Medical Money Matters, a weekly podcast brought to you by Healthy Practices, a healthcare consulting and revenue cycle company dedicated to keeping our clients independent. Please reach out if we can do anything at all to support your practice. You can find more information online at healtheps.com. That's www.healtheps.com. Please follow or subscribe to get all future episodes downloaded as soon as they're released. First, understand the structure of the deal. What percentage of ownership are you giving up? Are you selling all of it, or are you retaining a stake? Who controls the board after the transaction? Do you still have voting power, or are you essentially a contracted employee? These are great questions to ask the folks who are pitching you, and also to ask to some of the physicians in groups they acquired 3 to 5 years ago. Also, what's the timeline for the second recapitalization, the so-called second bite of the apple? That's when many physicians are promised their real payday. But if the second recap happens later than expected, or if valuations don't hold up, you may end up waiting longer or earning less than you had planned. We generally recommend that physicians get as much upfront as they can and to structure a deal so that you'd be happy with that payout if that's the only one you get, or the only one you get for a long time. Second, ask about the firm's exit strategy. PE firms don't invest indefinitely. Most aim to exit within 5 to 7 years. What happens to your practice in the next sale? Will your new owner be aligned with your values, or just another financial player? Are there protections in place to ensure continuity? Third, evaluate leadership continuity. Will your current administrative team remain in place post-close? Will there be a new COO or regional manager making operational calls? One of the biggest sources of post-deal discontent is losing trusted leaders and being forced to adapt to unfamiliar or inflexible systems. Fourth, look at the financial assumptions. Are growth projections realistic? Are cost synergies coming from shared services or from cutting staff and benefits? Ask to see the modeling and how they plan to achieve their return on investment. Don't be afraid to bring in your own advisors to stress test their assumptions. Fifth, and this is critical, Talk to other physicians who've sold to the same PE firm. Get their honest take. What changed? Would they do it again? What do they wish they had known beforehand? If a firm who is courting you resists this kind of transparency, that's a red flag. Also, consider the covenants and post-sale obligations. Are there non-compete clauses? Are you restricted in where or how you can practice if you exit early? What happens if you decide the arrangement no longer works for you? This is another good juncture to have your legal advisor review the agreement. And be sure that your attorney has negotiated several buy-sell agreements with PE in the past. If he or she hasn't, seek out an attorney who does have this kind of experience. And finally, be honest about your personal goals. If you're 5 years from retirement and looking for a succession plan, a PE deal might make sense. If you're 10 to 20 years away and want to preserve autonomy and culture, you may have other options worth exploring, such as physician-led supergroups, strategic affiliations, or internal recapitalization. I want to stress that at the end of the day, selling to private equity isn't inherently good or bad. It all comes down to fit. But too many physicians enter these deals without a full understanding of the trade-offs. So let's recap. Private equity generally promises liquidity, scale, and relief from the business grind. And they generally deliver on that. And they often bring a shift in autonomy, culture, compensation, and control. Before signing anything, ask the hard questions. Bring in experienced advisors. Speak to physicians who've lived through the transition with this company, not a lookalike. Look not just at what you gain, but also what you might have to give up. At Healthy Practices, we help medical groups evaluate these opportunities with clarity and objectivity. We've seen deals that worked well and others that unraveled. Our role isn't to push you in or out of a deal. It's to make sure you understand every angle, financial, operational, clinical, and personal, so you can choose the path that's right for you. Thanks for joining us on Medical Money Matters. If you found today's episode valuable, share it with your partners, colleagues, or board members. These are conversations worth having before it's too late. Be sure to subscribe for more insights at the intersection of medicine and money. And if you're navigating a potential deal or just want to understand your options, we're here to help. Until next time, stay informed, stay empowered, and keep practicing with purpose. Thanks for tuning in to today's episode of the Medical Money Matters podcast. Before you go, let me ask you, are you ready to take your medical group's coding to the next level? Because that's where Code Mastery comes in. Code Mastery isn't just another coding program. It's the ultimate physician-to-physician training solution to maximize your revenue and empower your physicians with the skills they need to code confidently and win the coding game. From comprehensive high-octane training to actionable insights, Code Mastery gives you the edge you've been looking for. Don't leave money on the table. Visit healtheps.com/codemastery to learn more and take control of your coding today. Let's transform your practice's financial future starting now. See you next time on the Medical Money Matters podcast.